Formula Access. Today I got a guest of resilience, adversity. You know, this is my language. This is my dig, you guys. Today we have JM Correa. He is probably, arguably, the highest profile guest that we've had on the show and kind of call it Junior Formula. We got deep, you guys. This is not a superficial conversation. This is not, tell me about your favorite car, tell me about your favorite team. This was very, very deep into what makes him tick. This was very much what goes on in the mind of a racer chasing his dreams at the highest levels. This was, what it was like going through, a career ending accident and how he recovered from that. This was about, how parents inspire their children and provide wisdom to their children um, to just look for the greater things in life and look for what is actually capable of being accomplished. This is something that JM has just grabbed a hold of and just walks with a chip on his shoulder to see his dream out, no matter what comes in front of him. You guys, this is an episode to watch. Sit back, relax, enjoy. Formula Access, welcome. We bring the people of motorsports to your doorstep, and today I bring you a really, really hometown special guest to the show. You guys have buried me with messages on bringing American guests in, and it is near impossible to find American guests in Formula One or in any part of the Formula series. And today I'm bringing JM Correa to the show. JM, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And like you said, it is difficult to find sometimes Americans in this sport. So yeah, really cool to be here.
I get messages all the time from people, which by the way is a really weird feeling to like post stuff on social media and then people start asking for specific guests, like really, really specific guests. And it's constantly, you got to find Americans in Formula One. And I'm like, I don't have people hunting personalities for this. I go on LinkedIn or I go on social media and find stuff, and we connected on TikTok. So, if I haven't told you yet, thank you for responding to that. Seriously, it's very, very rare.
No, I mean, I'm sorry it took a while. I just started getting sort of active on my TikTok, so I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did. I love doing podcasts. I feel like it gives a different perspective on who I am as a person. Sometimes doing just quick interviews, the questions tend to be the same. It gets a little bit repetitive. So, especially when I saw you were American, I was just as surprised as you were probably to find that there was an American driver. So I was like, "Yep, let's do it. It sounds like fun."
Yeah, it's funny because all the analytics were always 70, 80, 90% American, and now they're all over the place. And like Dublin, Ireland is the number one city on any of my platforms, which is interesting. I mean, I've had James Rowe on the show. He's from Ireland. Had a couple of people from Aston Martin on the show from Ireland as well. Maybe that's where it came from. But apparently we're a big deal over there. And I would have never guessed or pegged that because the U.S. is kind of where I want my number one audience to be. And I'm hoping that one day we hear the national anthem on the top step of the podium, and you're part of that. So
That would be awesome. Yeah, interesting thing about Ireland. I know. I mean, obviously, the following there of F1 is quite big. Um, I think my largest audience, or one of my largest audiences, is the UK as well. So I think that maybe includes Ireland. Not sure, but lots of fans over here, and like you said, yes, it would be amazing to have more American drivers in Formula One, and if I can be the one with the top place and listening to the anthem, that would be pretty cool. So hopefully you can be there to see it as well.
I I'm a big adversity guy. So for me, it's champions are born and bred from adversity and challenges. And you honestly have a really, really powerful story of just resilience and overcoming adversity. And we can get into that later, but it's to me is the difference maker between somebody that wants to be a Formula One driver and that will be a Formula One driver. And it's just a matter of time, in my opinion. So I'm rooting for you. But for all of our audience, tell them who you are, what you do, what are you doing today?
Yeah, so I'm JM. I'm an American Formula Two driver, going up the ladder. Been racing for a long time, and yeah, that's my season this year. F2, the step just before the maximum category, which is F1, and trying to get there.
So for the majority of the audience that are from America, we have the road to Indy here I guess call it the stepping stones to IndyCar, the big show. As you take that step towards Formula One, describe the differences between, F4, F3, F2, and then so on to F1. Like what are the differences in series or car or handling?
So each step of the way is sort of designed to teach drivers the basics and kind of groom them into being able to drive and be competitive in the top category, which is Formula One. The first step would be Formula Four. That's what you do after go karts. So for people that don't know, we usually 99% of us start with karting. Um, I'm talking like professional karting, not like your local K1 speed. Although some drivers start at the K1 and then they move to professional go karts. Um, then we do the step up to Formula Four, which is the smallest and slowest single seater like Formula car. You get introduced there to a little bit of downforce. The car has small wings. You start to understand how that works. Then you do the step up. A Formula 4 has around 180, 160 to 180 horsepower. Then you'll do the step up to Formula 3 Regional, which is a step in between Formula 4 and Formula 3. And that's a 240 horsepower car, a little bit more downforce, slightly bigger and heavier. Then you go up to Formula 3 International, the World Championship, which is a 400 horsepower car. Quite a significant amount of downforce, bigger brakes, bigger car as well. Starts to get quite heavy physically as well to drive. You start pulling some serious G's. And then the final step before Formula One is what I'm doing, which is Formula 2. And that's a 620 horsepower car. It produces a few thousand kilograms of downforce. It's pretty quick, carbon brakes, pulls, I think, around 4 Gs in the fast corners. And it's a perfect preparation for Formula One. So in our categories, we already have to go through tire degradation, tire management, a lot of the challenges that Formula One drivers face in F1. We are introduced to them as well in our categories. That's why you see a lot of rookies step up to F1 from Formula 2 and be competitive. And obviously, our categories are very, very competitive. They make for great racing. There's only 22 Formula 2 drivers in the whole world. So it's not like there's a ton of us. It's already pretty hard to make it to F2. And yeah, I think that's one of the best explanations I've done in such a short amount of time. I'm gonna clip that.
I'll clip it for you and send it to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've never been able to ask a driver this before, but what does downforce feel like? Okay, so
Mhm.
like when you finally get that added to your car, like do you feel it sink down? I mean, I only know from my son's racing sim, like what that doesn't even feel like anything. It just
Yeah.
sticks to the ground and doesn't slide off. But
Yeah. So what does it? I would say in terms of actual physical feeling, all of a sudden a car with high downforce can do things that are not. They don't seem physically possible. Like the physics don't quite make sense. So how late you can break into a corner, how aggressive and how fast you can be in the high speed, and the car just sticks to the ground. It doesn't add up for us. At least now, with the experience I have, downforce, I am able to manage the downforce. I count on the downforce. I trust the downforce fully, and it's sort of like it becomes a part of your element when you're driving. It's natural. But I remember the first times in Formula 4, even if it was a low downforce car, but the downforce is still pretty significant. Um, you have to build this sort of trust and feeling for it, and all of a sudden you're doing corners at 150 miles an hour, and you're like, how am I still on the track? It's pretty crazy. And in general, driving a fast car, a Formula 2, a Formula 1, it's like driving a roller coaster that you can control. That's the sort of G-force that you're pulling. It's really intense.
because you've driven a Formula One car too, right? You tested for Lotus and Alpha, right?
For Alfa Romeo, yeah, in 2019, I did an F1 test with them. So yeah, I know what it feels like, and it's pretty insane.
What I mean, what's the difference? Is it terrifying? I mean,
No,
you can't even.
it's actually very relatively easy to drive the Formula One car. It's like way easier to drive than a Formula Two. Like imagine like a Formula Two is basically like a tuned up Supra with sketchy suspension and no power steering. And you're giving this car, and somebody tells you you have to go as fast as you possibly can every single lap and survive. And then a Formula One, you basically sit down in a Ferrari with power steering, air conditioning, and the car is just so fast, but you're so comfortable inside. That's the best way I can describe it. Like F2, you're just fighting with a car, oversteering like crazy. It's much more physical because you have no power steering in Formula 2, so the steering wheel is incredibly heavy. Whereas when you go to the F1, it's a better designed car. It's a car that has cost hundreds of millions of dollars to be developed, and you can feel that when you drive. The way the car behaves, the feedback it gives you is so clear, it's so easy to feel. The steering wheel is much lighter because of the power steering. It's still bloody fast, in the corner. Sometimes the main issue you have in the F1 is like your neck. Like your neck doesn't know what's happening to it. You hit the brakes and your head just wants to go down. Um, but the rest is a much nicer experience than an F2.
So, what is the F1 plan for you? Do you have a plan in place?
I do. So I want to do this 2023 season in F2 and repeat one more year in the category and try to go for the championship, or at least to get the super license points that I need to then be eligible to get a Formula One seat. And at the same time, there's a whole sort of commercial plan to find partners and sponsors. Racing, as we were speaking about before, it's a business, and
Yep.
there's a lot of that matters when the time comes to go into Formula One, and I have a plan on that end as well. There's a huge American market that needs to be filled. So many fans coming in from the US, and they want drivers that they can cheer on too. So I am hoping to be one of those drivers and to appeal to them, and hopefully be the person that can represent them.
I mean, you got to have sponsors coming out of everywhere. I mean, an American driver, given the last, call it 5 years of Drive to Survive, Miami bred. I mean, you've got to. I mean, I know you're not from Miami, but that's where you reside. But like, you basically check all the boxes off as a marketable person.
Well, I'm glad you think so, and if you have any sponsorship ideas, I'm very open because I have some great sponsors,
Yeah.
some incredible American companies, but it's not easy at all. You know, like every year, finding the budget for Formula Two is obviously a struggle, and we put a lot of work and effort into it, and we have done a good job. But it's, you know, we're not like fighting off sponsors that are just throwing money at us. That's definitely not the case. It's a lot of work.
It's just because you haven't done my show yet. That's why.
Well, I hope. Hey, if this changes things, I'm gonna bring you to every race from now on. You can be my commercial manager. We'll find you a place for sure because yeah, it's a big thing. It's a big thing, and um, it's not a nice feeling as a driver. You know, when you're nearing the end of the season, the teams are getting filled up for the year after, and you're still trying to find the budget to be able to have a seat, and you have no idea what your future is gonna look like. It's pretty stressful. So yeah, it's I guess it's part of the game.
What? Okay, so what is the call it value proposition in junior formula? I mean, Formula Two is basically Formula One when it comes to. I mean, you're on F1 TV. I mean, you have your own kind of call it Drive to Survive show. What does a sponsor get at that level?
Mm. So Formula Two, in my opinion, is heavily undervalued for
Yeah.
what it is, and the reason for that, again, this is my opinion, is because in F1 we have seen in the last 10 years, but especially the last five, you know, with Drive to Survive, teams have turned a huge focus into commercializing the teams, marketing, social media, etc. And that change hasn't arrived in F2 yet. So teams are
Hmm.
still a lot more, I won't say traditional, you know, like run by old school team owners that have had these teams for many, many years, and they're sort of old school in the marketing. They don't understand why they need marketing, why that is important, how they could make money from that. And that affects us as drivers as well because unfortunately there's also this market of drivers that are pretty good and they just have quite a lot of family money and they just come in and they pay the budgets and it's not an issue for them. And that kind of destabilizes the way things work. So I think F2 as a whole has a product that it's gonna explode and it's gonna be valued much better than what it is now. So for me personally, I try to show that to my sponsors, show them you just have to look at the numbers, social media followings, TV presence. I can send you a deck later, like with the specifics. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we're talking about millions and millions of views every race weekend that we're there, which sort of compares to a category like IndyCar, which is basically a business that runs itself. So F2 should be able to do the same, right? It gives the same value to sponsors. So we show them that. Then a lot of it has to do also with my image. Um, I have this philosophy that finding a sponsor and signing a sponsor is the first step. But
Hmm.
just as important and difficult is to keep them on board and to make sure that they get what they want and that they're happy. Because I don't want to be a driver that I can sign a sponsor for a year and then, oh, thank you for the money, you know, see you when I see you. And after a year, obviously, they're not going to renew. So we work very hard on bringing them opportunities. So what companies find with us is a mix of you want the image, you want the recognition of being in a car. Sure, we'll put you in the car, we'll give you that image. You want me as an ambassador for your brand, for a product. You want to sell watches, you know. Maybe I fit that criteria, and you like how I work. We'll work on that. Other people, they just want to be involved in racing. They're passionate. They want to go to races. They want to enjoy it, or they want to do networking. You know, there's a lot of high net worth individuals with sort of high end businesses selling yachts, private planes, and they sponsor us to be able to be there in this very exclusive world where they can find more clients and actually the ROI is incredible for them because they're just there as selling yachts and planes and being involved with people with money. So you really need to find what clicks on each different case. It's a bit of an art to find the right compromise for everybody.
Because you're a brand too, right? I mean, can
Yeah.
you go in public and, I mean, do you get, I mean, you're in the UK, you get bombarded by fans?
No, we're not at that level yet. I do get recognized quite a bit, especially in cities that are big enough ones. So London, I get recognized now and then. Today, I got recognized in the tube with my friend. He thought it was really funny. Um, and we are a brand, and that's something that I've also had to learn the last few years. Like you gotta you gotta stay true to who you are, to be organic and connect with your audience. But you gotta manage your time and what do you do with a lot of caution, because especially nowadays with social media, it's so easy to say the wrong thing, do something that'll piss off one of your sponsors. So you got to be quite smart about it, and just have good people around you that can guide you.
So, I mean, do you speak corporately for your sponsors? Do you invite them to races? Is it all of the above? I mean, what are you providing them?
All of the above, whatever it is they need. So I have sponsors that want me to come and speak at internal corporate events, team building, motivation. Um, Other sponsors, for example, do gifts for their top employees. So whoever performs best gets to go with JM to a certain race and spend the day with him at the track. Um, a lot of them want to send their VIPs to the races, and we try to give them experiences that money can buy. Unless you're sponsoring me and you're part of my team, you can't just go out there and buy two Formula 2 passes and have a driver explain to your VIPs what each button in the steering wheel does. That doesn't exist. So we
Right.
offer that sort of experiences quite often as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've talked about that quite a bit on my show. I went to St. Pete last year
Mm-hmm.
and got to go hang out with Andretti and hospitality and honestly like did more business, my wife and I, at eating lunch, just trading business cards. What do you do? What do you do? Everybody's like, I need marketing or I need this or like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, you have a podcast. Like, it just, and then commercially, for my company as well, we found an acquirer at that event as well. So
There you go.
you can kind of disguise the sale in your passion. It's kind of like, let's talk racing, but just jam some work in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, most companies and individuals involved in sponsoring racing, they love the sport as well, and it's part of their identity. But I don't know if you're the same as me. For me, the best holiday is a holiday that I can go see something that I love and also do a bit of business and meet really cool people. I'd rather do that than be sitting on a beach like drinking a margarita. That doesn't really do it for me, at least not at this age. I'm still like, I hustle a lot. So yeah, I see a lot of that, and I've seen like incredible business connections be made. Like a lot of racing is also run by B2B.
Yep.
You'll get a company that maybe the owner wants to sponsor you, but he doesn't want to actually put money on the table. So you'll tell him, hey, no worries. Like, who are your suppliers? What business are you in? We can find suppliers that want to come in and do B2B, and in exchange of getting your business, they'll sponsor me for you. And that sort of stuff happens all the time. You just have to put it together.
And you come from an entrepreneurial family, so you understand, the value of being a connector.
100%. Yeah, I was lucky that my dad, when I was coming up through the categories, he never let me have it too easy. He made me work for it, and he had me involved in negotiations, contract signings from an early stage. He's also involved me in. He's a businessman, and he's involved me in his businesses as well. So sometimes he'll take me to a board meeting with him, and since I was like 14, just sitting there, like in the beginning, I didn't know what was happening, but that shaped me to understand really the business side of racing a lot more than most drivers, and that helps massively because, like we said before, I am the brand. So if I can understand what a business is looking for, how it works, I can shape sort of my program to fit that business pretty well. So I like it. I really do enjoy it. Even like I told you before, when I retire, I know I'm gonna do business, even if I don't need the money, because I find it so interesting. It's competitive, like racing is. It gets my emotions going.
Yeah, yeah, good and bad.
Yeah, exactly.
You give me hope. Seriously, I take my kids and I involve them in our businesses as well. And I just sometimes I sit back and wonder, like, are they taking any of this away? Or, you know,
They are for sure, 100%. It's the best thing that my parents could have done with me.
love it. So speaking of parents, what is your origin story? Like, how did you get started in this whole wild journey?
So my parents, my dad was born in Boca Raton, so Florida. My mother was born in Ecuador. Dad grew up part of his life in Ecuador, part of his life in the U.S. Met my mother in Ecuador, and they had me there. So I grew up. I was born in Quito, in the capital of Ecuador. Grew up there for the first 10 years of my life, and then we moved to Miami together as a family. And I started racing in Ecuador because my dad was. We were always big Formula One fans, and my dad started racing rally when he was like 35, just as a bit of a hobby. And he
Mhm.
started meeting people in the motorsports world in Ecuador, and um, I kind of grew up around engines and gasoline. So I had my first motorcycle when I was 3 years old. Uh, we had a farm. We would go there every weekend, and I would just ride around the whole farm in my motorcycle like full speed. Um, and actually, one of my dad's friends from Raleigh, he had a karting team, and he came to our farm one day, and he told me the story. I don't remember this, but he said one day at 6 a.m. he just got woken up by like a little 50C motorcycle just driving around in the backyard of the farm. And he looked outside, and it was just me like going flat out for like 2 hours nonstop. And he told my dad like, "Hey, why don't you take JM to the go kart track? Maybe he will like go karts as well." So my dad was like, "Sure, we'll try." And we went, and man, I jumped in that go kart, and I was like, I never want to see a motorcycle again. Like, this is my thing. I felt so good. It was super cool. And I started training. I started going twice after school to drive in the local karting track. After a few months, I started competing in Ecuador. And by the end of that year, I was national champion. And clearly, like, people started noticing that I was talented. I was very good. So then when we moved to Miami, it ended up being the best thing that could have happened to my career because I started racing locally in Florida, started doing really well, and kind of started escalating upwards as well. In 2013, I won the national championship in karting, and I won that in the American national championship. So I got a
Mhm.
ticket to go do the world championship later that year, representing Team USA. And I ended up winning the world championship out of nowhere. And that really was the pivotal moment in my career where I got offered a contract to go and race professionally in Italy. That was with Lotus. So I think you read about that because you mentioned Lotus before. So I was
Yep.
being part of the Lotus junior team and doing all the European and World Championships in Europe. And that's where it all took off.
When did you know, like, this wasn't just for fun, that this is like your dream?
And it was my dream since the beginning, since my early days training at the go kart track, because I grew up watching Formula One. So one of my heroes back then was Fernando Alonso and Michael Schumacher. Um, so I always thought that was really cool. And I guess when I started racing go karts, I was like, okay, I can be them. You know, they started like this, so why can't I do the same? So that was my dream. I mean, I had tunnel vision from the beginning. I must say, at that age, it was very naive of me. Of course, I was 7 years old. I was convinced I was going to be a Formula One driver. But the stage where it really started to seem feasible and sort of my life instead of me being a normal kid and racing on the side and my life sort of became racing, and then on the side I was a kid sometimes. That was in 2013 when I won that world championship. That's where it took off, and like I said, I moved to Italy, um, did homeschool for a bit, and then boarding school, then homeschool again, and basically nothing else mattered apart from my season and whatever I was racing in that year.
When did you get your? Did you start out with your own cart, or did you start out in like a rental league?
I started out directly in like professional go karts. I don't think back then there were even rental go karts in Ecuador. The motorsport community is quite small there. But I didn't have my own go kart. My dad's friend he was lending us a little mini cart. I even didn't have my first helmet until about a year into racing. So I was using one of this guy's helmets, which was so big on me. Um, the suit was borrowed as well. Like, yeah, my dad always sort of made a point with me of not giving me like the nicest material, not buying me like the newest helmet. He was like, win a race, you know. If you win a race, I'll get you a new pair of gloves. But you gotta give me something, you know. I'm not just gonna go out there and buy. And there would be like this car kids that would come in, you know, with the latest engine, the latest car, like brand new, flashy, and they didn't even know how to drive. So me and my dad were always making fun of them because I would go out there with my old borrowed helmet and just beat everyone. So yeah, it was quite funny.
I heard the advice. By the way, I like your dad so much already. You don't dress like a champion or get all the stuff of a champion to become a champion. You know, it's like I my son used to play soccer a long time ago, and it was like he had to get the latest and greatest like cleats and balls and all that stuff. And I was like, hey man, you know, like we'd go to Guatemala a couple of times a year, you know, and you'd see kids kicking around like a tape, like a trashed tape soccer ball, and would
Yeah,
just crush all the local suburban kids that came with us, you know. And
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, they don't have the latest and greatest, but look at that talent, you know. And
yeah.
I like your dad. I like people with means that teach their children the same lessons that they had to learn to achieve that level. I do the same thing with my kids. It's like, hey, you want a car? Go get a job, you know,
Yeah,
go work for it, save, and then I'll help you. But
yeah.
besides that, so what qualities have you taken away from having good parents or entrepreneurial business minded parents in your family? Like, what are you taking away from that?
Um, I think one of the biggest ones is just a lot of hard work. You know, when I was growing up, my mom was working. She has her own company as well. My dad was working too. So that was the only environment that I knew. They were great parents, spent a lot of time with me, you know, but I just thought everybody was like that. And then and as I grew up and became an adult, I realized like a lot of people don't really. That's not
Yeah.
their reality. You know, they don't do that. So um, I'm really glad that I saw that because that's just how I am. Otherwise, I feel uneasy. Then I think I have a good eye for business opportunity and understanding people. So I like to think I take good quality, the better qualities from my mom and the better qualities from my dad and combine them. So my mom is a very friendly, loving person. Everybody just loves my mother.
Yep.
Eh, so I take that from her. Like I'm very good with people. I'm easy to talk to. I'm I would say quite emotionally intelligent. Like I don't get angry easily. Like you know I'm just like doing my own thing. And on the other hand, my dad is just he's just brilliant business wise. Like he sees opportunities. He will find gold where there is none and have a good vision for long term plans. So I take that from him. So yeah, I mean, I'm still very young in this, and I will just get better at it as well. Business is like a sport, you know. The longer you do it, the more experience you have. Things just start coming easier to you. But yeah, I take a lot from both of them.
You mentioned earlier in a comment about the sacrifice of being a kid. Like, Were you able to be a kid?
I was able to be a kid. I was not able to be a teenager so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that point, at 15, 16, 17, when you're going through puberty, you're becoming a little man basically. I think there's a normal process that every kid goes through, and they mess up, and it's the first time you have a drink, it's the first time you kiss a girl, that sort of stuff that I kind of missed out on that in a way, or at least not. I didn't do it in the traditional way, which was like at school, like when I was in high school, I was always sort of the outsider because I was missing more than half of the school year. In the weekends, my friends were inviting each other to their houses, and I was out racing, or I was training, or I just didn't have a lot of friends, so I was at home alone because nobody knew what I was doing. And then eventually, at one point, my dad made me decide. Like that's another thing with my parents. They never forced me to race. Like they couldn't care less if I raced or not. They were like, if you want to race, you gotta earn it, and then we'll support you. If you don't want to race, go be a kid. Just have A's, and then you can do what you want. It's all good. So that I think that helped me kind of build this fire inside of me, where I knew that if I wasn't the one pushing for it, they didn't care. It's not that my dad had dreams of being a driver and he was living his dreams through me, which you see quite
Right.
often in a lot of
Oh yeah.
parents. I'm sure you know. So yeah, as a kid, I sort of had to decide by myself of, okay, like, which way do I want to go? Do I want to take the traditional way and go out partying and be stupid, or do I want to sacrifice that and try to become professional? Right now it seems easy, but when you're that age, you're immature. It was like a battle, Like at some points I tried to do both as well, and it obviously didn't work. You compromise on both sides. So yeah, it took a bit of time and maturity until I got the flow of that right.
I love that analogy of being able to be a kid but not a teenager. I have two teenagers, so I I get this whole world that you're talking about. I was a teenager at one point in my life, but to see it outside of that is a different experience. But that's an amazing analogy of the sacrifice that you're making to chase this dream. And honestly, I think it's admirable that you have the wherewithal and the emotional intelligence to know what that means and to understand what it takes to chase it. But
Thank you.
of all the time that you've had in motorsport, I mean, you're basically there. What's been your pinch me moment of your career so far?
um, well, basically, it's not there. There's still a lot of work to do. And I keep myself very honest in that. Being in F2 is a privilege. We are very few, but we haven't made it yet. So yeah, I every year I just work harder than the previous one. But I think first I'm gonna give you three good ones. First one was when I won the karting world championship. That was like holy smokes! Like I was not expecting it. I was, I think, the first American to do it since the 1970s as well. So it was like, wow. I could not believe it. I could not sleep for 3 days. No joke. I did not sleep for 3 days. The second one, when I got signed to F2, 2019, uh, it was a tough process. There was sort of like a shootout between a few drivers to get the seat. There was just one seat left in the team, and um, actually they called my manager. This was like a week after, so they were analyzing and deciding. They called my manager. My manager called my dad, and then my dad called me down to the kitchen, and he was like, "Yeah, no, you didn't get it." And I was like, just cussing out, and he just started bursting of laughter, and he was like, "You got it," and I was like, "Oh my god!" And yeah, I partied that night with my dad. Like it looked like we had won a race because we were just so happy. Um, and then the third one was when I drove the Formula One car in 2019, my first F1 test. My family was there, and my parents, which made it really special because they had to sacrifice a lot for this too. Like families are just as involved as the actual
Oh yeah.
races themselves. So it was sort of like a little tick. Like okay, we're not. I'm not an F1 driver, but I can say I drove a Formula One car in a test, and that was a big accomplishment for us.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to word this. When you're in a Formula One test, I mean, you're in the big show, you're around the team. Does that give you the access to like start that conversation of like what this journey looks like? Do you sit with the people at Alpha, or do your handlers, are they sitting with them like, how do we connect the dots here? How do we get from Formula 2 to Formula 1? I mean,
Yeah.
is that happening, or is it just a showcase?
Um. No, there is some of that happening. Everybody sort of knows what is needed. It's the way I see it is things have to start happening at the right moment in the right time, and when you're starting to approach the possibility of becoming a contender for an F1 seat, that's when your management start having those talks with certain teams. Like, what does this look like? What do they want? What do they think about you? And you start sort of trying to connect the dots. At that moment in my F2 in my F1 test, there was a little bit of that. Like I had a very clear goal. I was going pretty well in F2. So yeah, we were definitely thinking about that, but we were always very cautious as well to not divert any of our effort and attention from F2, because at the end of the day, you can dream of F1 all you want. If you don't perform in F2, you're not gonna get that chance. So we were always just prioritizing F2. But yeah, there were a bit of talks about it, and then obviously the accident happened and everything changed from one day to another.
What is your goal of an F1 test? I mean, at the time it was Kimmy, right? I mean, are you trying to beat his time? I mean, is that your goal?
No, in that test in particular, we used the last V8 engine car that they had. Um, so it was just it was me and another driver in the test. So I guess they were comparing the two of us a bit. They don't speak much about it. It's not like, okay, guys, we're gonna give you this amount of laps, and whoever wins gets the seat. Like nah. They play it down a lot, and they just want you to be comfortable and confident. But of course, I was pushing like hell the whole time, and just
Yeah.
really enjoying it. And the team was pretty impressed with what I like. It was a very successful test. I felt really confident in the car. I was putting the car on the limit since the beginning, and yeah, it was a really good thing to do. Also because you're able to show the F1 team. They have all their engineers. They're evaluating you. You're able to show them what you can do, and that in the future, if you do position yourself for an F1 seat, having done a test with them previously can make a big difference, because they're like, wait a second, this guy knows what he's doing. He's tested with us, and he's very good. So that was my goal, was impress. Obviously, don't crash the car. You don't want to crash the car in your first F1 test, definitely. But just be professional, be open minded, listen to them, learn, and try to impress. Yeah.
Okay, here's where we go deep. What's the hardest lesson that you've learned in your career? Like, when did the rubber meet the road
Mm.
that you can just take away and just put it in your pocket for the rest of your life?
That ego is your biggest killer. And what I mean by that is, it took me a long time and a lot of maturity to be able to actually accept and understand that there are a lot of drivers and kids out there that are more talented than me, that are better in many ways. And unless you're able to put your ego aside and actually sit down and learn and grow from it, you're just limiting yourself. That is a huge one, and that I see top drivers that have been or are in F1 that still haven't figured that out. Yeah, I mean, in business is the same. I'm sure you know. You
Yeah.
know, if you sit down in a room and you think automatically that you're the smartest person in the room, that's not a good thing. That's in the long term, that's not gonna work out for you. And it's sort of the same as a driver. There's always gonna be somebody that does that corner better than you, that manages their tires a little bit better than you. How you become really great and excel compared to the others is if you're just really good at almost everything. You're never gonna be the best at every single thing. So instead of kind of shutting down and being like, oh no, it's impossible. He's not better than me or whatever. You just sort of embrace that and actually take that as an opportunity.
What's your why? Why do you do this?
Because it's different. Because
Yes.
I don't
Great
want
answer.
I don't want the normal life. That
Yeah.
is something that I knew since I was born. Like, I just want to be different. I want to do things my way. I am addicted to the adrenaline and the emotions that it brings. I'm sort of addicted to the lifestyle at this point because I've been doing it for so long. All the traveling and the intensity of it. It really gets me going. But yeah, it's just so cool. I mean, it's different. You only have one life, and if I am lucky enough to be talented at this, to have had the opportunities that I've had so far, and to have made it this far, um, I'm gonna keep going as far as I can.
So I obviously I don't want to I don't want to beat a dead horse here and talk about the accident here, but how did you okay, so you have this, seemingly career-ending accident and most people's situations. When and how did you decide like this is not going to stop me? This is just basically this is a short season, it's a setback. I don't care what people say. I don't care what doctors think. I'm going to go for this again.
Hmm. Um, when I came out of the coma and sort of things started to miraculously kind of work out, and I would say when I was certain that I was going to survive, to put it shortly, that when I was not fighting for my life anymore, just for my legs and my spine and everything else, but I knew I was going to have a life after that. That's when I told myself, okay, what do you want to do? What are you going to do the rest of your life? I always think ahead. I always need to have a goal, something I'm working towards. Um, and that's when I realized, like this crash, yeah, it's scary. It's terrible. I wish I wasn't going through this, but it doesn't take away that fire, that passion that I have for the sport. It doesn't. It makes it almost even worse to quit right now. After going through all of this, after sacrificing my whole life to the sport. And one really important thing that led me to this decision as well was I realized early on that I was going to need a lot of motivation to actually get through the whole rehabilitation process. And I couldn't think of a better motivation than to say something absolutely crazy like, I'm going to race again. And everybody was going to tell me, like, no, you're not. And then I was going to prove everybody wrong 2 years later. So I was like, that's a perfect plan. Like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And that's when sort of my master plan began. More, I got to work, and I literally planned the whole thing. Like it was like this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna see this doctor. This treatment. Uh, deal with obviously you have unexpected stuff, but I will drive again. Yeah, that was I was still in the hospital at that point.
I have this like personal legacy answer and response. And, I think a lot in business, I think people always ask the question about legacies and, what makes you tick and whatnot. And, one primary response that I have to that is, you know, I want my personal legacy to be that when all people thought that it couldn't happen or that I couldn't get through something, that I did, and like that no one should ever doubt me or, not think that I'm capable of something that I put my mind to. And I'm hearing that the whole time that you're explaining the answer is like almost like that situation motivates you more than you were motivated before. It's almost like that chip on your shoulder is just a brighter, hotter fire that gets created. Maybe I'm wrong,
No,
but you're not in your head.
that's
So
spot on. That, but I have a question for you. Like legacy, when you think about your legacy, is it once you're dead or while you're still alive?
I think I always evaluate that.
Hmm.
I always keep a professional legacy and a personal legacy, and and I always try to be prepared to answer that question. That's, in business, that's how you kind of set somebody off really fast, is like if you're losing control of the conversation, if you just say, what is your legacy in life? Like, what do you want to be remembered by, or how do you want people to, view you? 9 out of 10 people can't answer that question like that, and I
Hmm.
think that, it really, when you can answer that question in a professional environment, it really like showcases who you are. Like you've actually thought of what you want to be when you grow up, or you've thought what you want people to say when you're not around or when you're dead,
Yeah,
and I think that's always important, because when you get around the highest levels of business, and you know this from your parents, your people come at you for like, they want something that you have. They want wisdom, they want information or a formula or how you got where you got. And when you are a sponsor, when you are a leader or somebody, you're motivated by people that have like thought like you have. Like I think as a business leader, having a race car driver come speak to a sales team about like that inner drive and that inner thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, and no matter what comes your way, whether it's a career ending crash or, you know, a bad day or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You just get up and you do. And, it doesn't matter what's going on in your life. And so when you ask that question and somebody can answer that in any situation, you kind of, oh, wow, okay, this person is different, you
yeah.
know? I think that connects people really fast when you can answer that. Keep that in your back pocket
That,
for
yeah, no,
sponsors.
that's great advice. It's true. I connect with that. I just have never put it into the words of, yeah, what's your legacy, but that's essentially what it is. So um, yeah, I think going back to what you said of having a chip on my shoulder, like that was literally how I felt. And when I feel like that is when I'm the most motivated, you know.
Oh
So
yeah.
sometimes, um, even now, or before the accident, I would purposely put a chip on my shoulder when I was like, I need to, like I gotta grind for this. So I would create fake enemies, like I'm gonna prove them wrong. Even if nobody was telling me I couldn't do it, I was like, I will prove them wrong. That's sort of my personality. So this was something that I needed, and it was essentially what helped me get through it, because I knew it was gonna be tough. I didn't think it was gonna be that tough. Honestly, the whole process was just so hard.
But you've overcome it. You've made it back into a car. You made it into F3. You are now in F2. Like that's is that I mean, is that even a pinch me moment for you? I mean, you think about where you've been in the last what, 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah.
I
Um,
mean,
yeah. Uh, Sort of crazy. It it's nuts. It's totally nuts. It's totally nuts. Yeah. That's why I'm working on a documentary because I wanna really tell my story. I want people to see the deepest and darkest parts of this whole thing that nobody knows except my family and my closest friends. Um, because it's really intense, and I sort of juggle two balls because on one hand, my story is incredible. I I think about the accident often. I take a lot of things that I've learned from this experience on my day to day, and it just has helped me become a happier and better person. But on the other hand, I am a driver again, and I need to sort of have this tunnel vision mindset of like, I don't care what happened in the past, like I'm just looking forward. So I combine those two as best as I can, and depending on what I need in that moment, that's what I tap into. But definitely sometimes I lose a little bit of perspective of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was in a wheelchair. The doctors were laughing at me when I said I was going to drive again. And now I'm here driving in Formula 2, which is possibly the second most competitive category in the world of racing. There's only 22 drivers. Yeah, that is pretty wild when you put it that way. So, yeah.
hang your hat on that. Seriously. You can listen to this episode every time you start to doubt yourself and realize, crap, I'm something special here. I got some extra motivation, and I'm gonna go for this thing. What advice do you have for young drivers? So when you've been in the karting days, every kid on that track wants to be a professional race car driver, and very few of them have not necessarily the talent, but the drive and the motivation to actually go do it. And what advice do you have for any young person listening to this show saying that, hey, I want to be a race car driver, and it's more than glitz and glam. Like what do they got to have?
You gotta be obsessed, absolutely obsessed. The It's such a competitive sport that talent or money or you know luck is only gonna take you so far. My mentality was always, how do I make a difference in anything? It can be from the smallest little thing of how I train at the gym, to at what time I arrive to the track, to how many minutes I slept the night before. Like, the higher you go up the ladder, the more of these details everybody's looking at, and the more competitive it is, and the harder you have to try. So that obsessiveness is really the only way to do it. If you don't enjoy, I don't think enjoy is the right word, because many times I don't enjoy, waking up at 6 a.m., going to the gym, going to the simulator for 8 hours in a row. I'm not cheering of happiness, but I enjoy the process, and I enjoy what that brings me, and I enjoy what I have become due to that sacrifice and that effort. Um, but really, you have to be fully committed, and
Yeah.
like you said, the motorsports F1 in particular is so much glitz and glamour, and
Yeah.
kids see that and they're like, oh my god, like I want to be an F1 driver and party every weekend and hang out with models and be in a yacht in Monaco. Like, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but that's not the reality. That's maybe the 5% of the public things that F1 drivers are doing. The other 95%, they're grinding, they're busting their ass in the gym, they're talking with sponsors, doing things that they don't enjoy doing, and just for that 1% difference. So yeah, just work really, really hard.
Who is your most trusted person around you. You're getting to the level of, call it stardom, where people start kind of surrounding you. The yes men surround you, or yes women or whatever, but like you start to hit a bubble of like it's the JM show, and like everybody wants a piece of something, like who is your like who's your compass
My
that
dad.
keeps you okay.
Yeah. Not just him, but I
Sure.
mean, me and my dad, we're tight. Like we really. Uh, he is my compass for a lot of the racing stuff. I like to think that I'm his compass for a lot of the business stuff. Sometimes he calls me up for advice on things he's dealing with in his company, and I tell him, look, I have no idea what you're talking about, but this sounds like this is what you need to do. And he always tells me like, damn, like you know exactly, you understand me. So, and it's the same with me. So I have started to get a feel of that bubble that you're talking about, which is something sort of new to me, but it's not a surprise. So I have people that I trust. I have a very good radar on what people want and the true intentions behind everybody. And you just gotta keep the ball rolling. Always be true to yourself. Don't get caught up in that bubble yourself. And that's why I stopped you before when you said you're basically there. Like, no, you're not. I'm still in F2. uh, F1 is a big step away. It's one step, but it's a big step away. And I don't consider myself a star or anything even close to that. So I just keep myself grounded, and if I see that the people around me are less grounded than me, that's immediately a red flag of like, okay, that's that's not who I want to be associated with.
Where does this resilience and just, I don't know, perseverance come from? Like how is this created? It's rare, man. It is so rare in people these days, and
I don't
I
know.
mean, you got it.
I don't know. I think probably a mix of maybe genes. I have two very resilient parents, but it's what's that? What is it? What they call like the difference between how a person is due to their genes or due to the experiences they had. There's a term to that. I don't know how that compares within myself. I can just tell you from like how I was brought up. Uh, that is probably most of it. And then personality, just competitiveness, having that chip on your shoulder. Like I'll give you a really good example. So I have a younger brother. He's 19 years old. The smartest person I know. No joke. Like this guy, anything he gets into, be it video games, studying, or even sports, he's so coordinated. Like I always tell him, he's 10 times more talented than me at any sport, including racing. Including racing.
Hmm.
If he would have chosen racing, I'm sure he would have been more talented than me. Um, but he doesn't have the same personality that I have of like just being so freaking competitive and like putting your mind to something and like not being able to sleep until you do that. So he tried karting when he was like 6 or 7 years old, and he just told my parents, look, like this is cool, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care if I win. I don't care if I lose. And now he's studying, and he's. I always tell him like you better be successful because if I don't make it in racing, you're gonna have to pay my bills, and I'm sure you're gonna make a lot of money because you're so smart. So he's my plan B. Um, but I guess a lot of it is just personality. You can ask my parents when I was already like 3 4 years old. Everything was a competition. Like who could shower the fastest, who could eat their food the fastest, who could run the fastest. Like I was just like always looking for that satisfaction of being the best at something, or yeah, beating other people. So I think a lot of it comes from that too.
This is just a stupid dad comment. In a wrestling match, who wins, you or your dad? Now.
Me, me,
Okay.
yeah. He's strong. I don't know if he's stronger than me. I'm pretty strong now, but just his cardio wouldn't last. You know, after a couple minutes tossing, he would be out of breath. Yeah, but we haven't tried it. I hope it doesn't get to that.
My son's like 6 feet tall, so he's probably 6 inches tall. Well, he's probably 4 inches taller than I am.
Mhm.
And he'll lift weights and he'll be like, "Dad, check my guns out." He's like, "I'm so much taller and bigger than you are," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you can't take me."
Oh yeah.
You know,
How
there's so
old is
much.
he?
He's 16, so
Wow. So he's really
he's
tall. Wow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. He's very very tall, very athletic, but Dad's still got more fight inside of him. So,
Yeah. Well, experience. Experience means a lot in everything you do. Yeah.
well, seriously, Jam, thank you for coming on. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Like, I really appreciate when people take time to come on a show and tell their story, because you have an amazing story, and you've got a very impressive personality, and I'm around a lot of young people and a lot of people in the business world, and those are rare qualities that you carry. It's going to take you a long way, and whatever we can do to help you get there, you know we're here for you. If you ever want to come back on the show and ask for something, come do it. Um, I always say we're completely open. I still text and email every guest that I've had on the show. And if you're ever at a race, if you're in Austin, definitely hit me up, and love to shake your hand, meet you in person, and just thank you. I really appreciate it. You're busy, 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 and we're just a little passion project here. So
No, no, no. On the other hand, thank you. This has honestly been one of the best podcasts I've had. Really, really cool. I think we understand each other a lot on the business side as well, so that's nice, and really my pleasure. I will exchange numbers with you, and we'll be in touch, and I'm sure I'm gonna meet you in person later this year. So yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. Thank you for all the listeners, to all the
yeah,
American fans. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow my season in F2, and yeah, we'll be in touch, and I would love to be back.
yeah. I got a dog in the F2 fight now. Let's go.
Yeah, you gotta follow it, and I don't know if you've seen a lot of F2 races, but the show is incredible. Like you'll be entertained for sure. So
Yeah, I've been following the what is it, Catch the Dream or
yeah,
Chasing the
chasing
Dream?
the dream. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good show. I wish they would send that to Netflix or something and get some real airtime, but
yeah.
it is like it's buried in this app, and I did find it. I tried to promote it on social media, but it needs a lot more airwaves.
It's like I told you, F2 is a work in progress. I think as a series, it has potential, but it needs a little bit of push. So yeah, but it'll get there. It'll get there.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. I got to jump onto a sales call actually. So
All right. Good luck. Good luck with that, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
I,
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Bye.